And so this is why it is the most important first step, that with all the ways you can, life hack yourself and all of the guru's technique du jour, fundamentally, if we don't deal with this fact that we are trying to escape an uncomfortable sensation when we become distracted, if we don't understand it and learn new methods to cope with that discomfort, we're always going to be distracted by one thing or another. And 9 times out of 10, by just setting that 10-minute rule, it's an incredibly effective and simple technique.
일상에서 수많은 방해 요소들로 인해 자꾸 해야 할 일에 집중하지 못하고 일의 효율은 자꾸만 떨어집니다. 그렇다면 절대 방해받지 않는 사람이 되는 비밀은 과연 무엇일까요? 이번에는 초집중의 저자 니르이얄의 영상입니다. 니르이얄은 우리는 왜 방해받는지 그리고 집중력이 흐트러지는지에 대해 본질을 해석하고 충동적 행동을 이겨내는 10분 법칙에 대해서 설명합니다. 무언가를 하고 싶을 때 딱 10분만 참으라는 것인데요. 그 10분 동안 계획된 일 혹은 하고 있던 스케줄을 해나가면 충동은 마치 파도와 같아서 10분 후에 우리는 그 행동을 더 이상 원하지 않게 되고 그렇게 방해받지 않는 자신을 만들어갈 수 있다는 것입니다. 요즘 지루하거나 심심하면 마냥 즐겁지도 않고 볼 게 없다고 느끼면서도 유튜브를 보고 있는 나 스스로를 발견하는데 이것 역시 불편함을 벗어나고자 하는 충동에 불과하다는 것을 저도 이 영상을 통해 알게 되었답니다.
That most distraction, it turns out, is not spurred by the external triggers at all. Most distraction does not start outside of us, but rather starts from within. That the root cause of why we become distracted is because we feel these internal triggers, these uncomfortable emotional states that we seek to escape. So if we're going to answer Plato's question of why do we get distracted, why do we do things against our better judgment, we have to start one layer deeper with first principles of why do we do anything? What's the nature of human motivation? And when you think about it, most people will tell you some version of carrots and sticks, that it's about the pursuit of pleasure and the avoidance of pain. This is Freud's pleasure principle.
Yeah.
But neurologically speaking, that's not true. That in fact, we do not do things in the pursuit of pleasure and the avoidance of pain. That neurologically speaking, we only do things for one reason, and that is to avoid discomfort. Physiologically, we know this is true. If you go outside and it's cold, that's not comfortable. What do? You put on a coat. And when you go back inside, now it's too hot, that's not comfortable, you take it off. If you're hungry, you feel hunger pangs, you eat. And when you're stuffed, oh, that doesn't feel good, you stop eating. So physiologically, we feel this all the time. This is called the homeostatic response. The same rules apply with psychological sensations, not just with physiological sensations. So when you're feeling lonely, check Facebook. When you're uncertain, you Google. When you're bored, check the news, check sports scores, check Reddit, Pinterest, whatever. All of these things cater to these uncomfortable sensations. So that means if all human behavior is spurred by a desire to escape discomfort, that means, as you said, time management is pain management. And so this is why it is the most important first step, that with all the ways you can, life hack yourself and all of the guru's technique du jour, fundamentally, if we don't deal with this fact that we are trying to escape an uncomfortable sensation when we become distracted, if we don't understand it and learn new methods to cope with that discomfort, we're always going to be distracted by one thing or another. Yeah, so this was a study done by Timothy Wilson where they put people in a room and they said there's nothing in this room to do except for we're going to put a band on your arm and it's going to be connected to a button that you can press on. This button will give you a painful electrical shock. Something like 60% of men and about 20% of women administer the shock. That we are so uncomfortable doing nothing that we just want to feel something. We need some kind of sensation. Well, if you're not happy all the time, if you're not satisfied with your life, somehow something's wrong with you. And it turns out that evolutionarily speaking, nothing could be further from the truth. That our species is designed to be perpetually perturbed, right? We have this instinct of feeling bored to prod us to go do something, to go search, to find better resources, to improve our lot in life. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. That we can harness that, right? This is the same impulse that helps us develop life-changing medicine, helps us invent new things, helps us shoot for the moon. It comes from that desire for more. So I don't think the answer to all of our problems is to not want, to not crave, to not desire. I think the answer is to channel these internal triggers towards traction rather than distraction. We form these habits by by learning what provides relief. I mean, if there's one thing that our brain is incredibly good at, is pattern matching. So if the brain feels discomfort and then finds something that can relieve that discomfort, that's what it forms the habit around. We actually know that the reason we even have brains, so how do we relate that to our own lives? We need to understand that if we are to fight distraction, if we are to be the kind of people who do what we say we're going to do, we only really have two choices. We can either fix the source of the discomfort in our life, whatever it is that's causing us this pain, or we need tactics to cope with the discomfort. For example, part of being human is that part of the human condition is that you can't solve every problem in your life. You can't even, I would argue, you can't even keep yourself from feeling those feelings. What you can do is change how you react to your emotions. And so that's the really important part, is either fixing the source of the problem where you can, or learning tactics to cope with that discomfort in a healthier manner. One of the things that people do that doesn't work is strict abstinence. Now, strict abstinence is when you tell yourself, I am not going to do that thing, right? And it turns out that strict abstinence for many behaviors backfires, particularly behaviors that are very difficult to avoid completely. So, if you're a recovering drug addict, you might be able to abstain completely from a substance you abused. But how do you abstain from food if you're on a diet? We have to eat. How do you abstain from technology these days? I mean, it's imperative to do our jobs. We can't just say, stop using email for 30 days, you'll lose your job, you'll get fired. So for those type of potential distractions, we don't want to just abstain. When we do abstain, when we tell ourselves, no, absolutely not, it's almost like pulling on a rubber band. That when you pull on a rubber band and you stretch it, and you let go, it doesn't just go back to where you started, it ricochets even further. And that's what happens when we employ strict abstinence. We tell ourselves, don't do it. Okay, fine, I'll give in. And that sensation of relieving the discomfort of telling yourself not to is itself pleasurable. This is a big reason why smokers get addicted to cigarettes. Smokers, when they are mindful about the experience of smoking, they actually rate it as not pleasurable. It's stinky, it's not very pleasurable. There's nothing inherently pleasurable. Nicotine does make you feel a certain way, but many smokers don't actually report it makes them feel good. It just makes them feel something. What gets them to keep smoking is not only the physiological effects of the nicotine. What more so gets them addicted is telling themselves, don't do it. Finally, I smoke, and now I'm relieved of the discomfort of having to tell myself, don't do it. So strict abstinence oftentimes backfires. Because when we finally do give in, we are wiring our neural circuitry to expect, when I feel the discomfort of not wanting something, giving in makes it feel so pleasurable, not because the behavior itself is pleasurable, but because it relieves us of the discomfort of telling ourselves no. So instead of you telling yourself no, what you can do is employ a technique like this 10-minute rule, where here's how it works. You tell yourself that you can give in to any distraction, whether that distraction is checking email when you want to work on a big project, whether that you're tempted to Google something or eat that piece of chocolate cake you don't want to have. You can give in to that distraction in 10 minutes. 10 minutes of doing what psychologists call surfing the urge. When it comes to these uncomfortable emotional states, we know that emotions don't last forever. In the moment, we think they will last forever. That's how the brain spurs us to do something about it, right? It spurs us to action by making us think, I don't want to feel this way anymore. But logically, rationally, when we think about it, emotions are like waves. They crest and they subside. So we can surf these urges like a surfer riding a wave. So for 10 minutes, what I oftentimes do, I'll take out my phone, I'll say, set a timer for 10 minutes, I'll put my phone down. And my job for those 10 minutes is to simply reflect on that sensation and talk to myself the way I would talk to a good friend, with self-compassion.
Yeah.
So how do you diffuse it? You don't become contemptuous, you become curious. So for 10 minutes, your job is to reflect on that sensation, to feel that sensation with curiosity rather than contempt, or to get back to the task at hand. And 9 times out of 10, by just setting that 10-minute rule, it's an incredibly effective and simple technique.
여러분도 이 영상을 통해 충동적인 행동을 스스로 억제하고 본인 스스로를 잘 절제할 수 있는 성공적인 삶을 차곡차곡 쌓아 나가시길 바라겠습니다. 니르이얄의 10분 법칙만 잘 기억하고 파도와 같은 감정을 단 10분의 시간이 당신의 삶의 질을 훨씬 빛나게 만들어줄 것입니다. 당신은 우주의 유일한 사람입니다.